Good morning, Anne.
Good morning, James.
And good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. So, Sunday morning, Anne, here we are again.
I know.
Episode 24.
Wow, it's gone quickly.
We say that every week.
We do, but it is going quickly.
It is going quickly, you are right. So, if you haven't listened before, for the next half an hour or so, Anne and I are going to have another conversation. We don't know specifically what we will discuss. We shall see where it goes.
Okay.
Are you happy to begin, Anne?
I am, yes.
Brilliant. I thought to start with this week, I could ask you about education and specifically your education, your time at school.
A long time ago.
A long time ago. Well, you can talk about that. I think it's relevant and genuinely I'm interested and I am assuming, hoping that you all listening are interested too, as to what schooling was like for you and everything that came after, and also the comparison with today's schooling and education as well. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yes.
Okay, over to you then, Anne, over to you.
Okay. My earliest memories of school are when I would probably be about 4, because I think my brother was about 2. And we were from a very poor area, and we went, because we were poor, we were in a poor area, we went to what was called a ragged school in those days.
A ragged school?
A ragged school, which is, it really, when you think about it, ragged school was, the kids were in rags.
Wow. So you were 4 years old? As far as you can remember.
I was about that age.
So it's about 1944?
Yes.
Wow.
Because children would be going to school very early then because of the war.
Okay.
Because parents had to go, remember women had to go out to work. They'd never worked before that, women. But when it came about the war and the men went off, women had to keep this country going.
Yes.
So I would imagine, I don't know about this, but I would imagine the children went to school earlier. But the first memories I have of the ragged school was that when my brother came,
yes,
and in the afternoon everybody had to have a sleep in school.
Okay.
Now I remember that part, and they were like truttle beds, I would think, wooden beds that folded up with just a canvas.
Yes.
And the children used to lie on these beds.
So these are in the actual school building?
In the actual school building. So these tiny children would have a sleep.
Okay.
This is only my memory, so I don't know how only from a child's memory. I don't know.
You're not
how
quite
it
sure
worked.
how accurate it is.
No.
But you can remember specifically this
but why
occasion.
Why I remember it is that my brother, they put my brother down to sleep, and then they had a blanket over him, and they had pins, safety pins, like big nappy safety pins.
Yes.
And they were putting the safety pins, and I thought they were pinning him to the bed. And I was getting upset, and I can remember getting upset and crying and saying, "Leave him alone." You
thought the teachers were literally pinning him to the actual bed?
Pinning him to the actual bed.
Right, okay.
I mean, years later, what I found out was they weren't. They were pinning the blanket to the bed because it was like a canvas. So that he wouldn't fall out or couldn't get out.
I understand.
But for me, as a child, so that's my first memory of primary school, really, is that they pinned you to beds.
Right, okay.
I don't remember much about my own schooling, except there was always a lot of reading.
Okay.
So in those days, it was reading, writing, arithmetic.
Reading, writing and arithmetic.
Remember they said the 3 R's?
Yes.
So it wasn't arithmetic, it was arithmetic.
Okay.
Reading, writing, no W with it. Reading, writing, arithmetic.
Right, okay.
So those were the most important things for a child to learn. And I still agree to this day, those are the most important things a child should learn.
Okay.
Because reading gives you imagination, writing means you've got communication,
Yes.
and arithmetic means that you can look after yourself. and your own finances. And I don't think in today's schools that they're not the priority in such a basic level. So once when my dad came back from the army, and my mother had saved enough money for him to have an illegal bookies, which he had, this illegal bookies.
An illegal bookies?
Yes, because it was illegal.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
she'd saved the money for him to run a bookies from out of the backyards.
Wow.
So this was done in between him working at the English Steel, because he was a turner,
Yes.
English Steel. But in between times, she would help him and they would run this illegal bookie. So it was illegal, but I was a bookies runner.
Right.
At 8, I was a runner, which meant that I took all the bets to the local factories. So I went to the factories, took the bets and the money off the men,
Yes.
took them back to wherever my dad was working from.
Yes.
And then if I would have to watch out for the police.
In my mind, I am envisaging Peaky Blinders with the
Not different.
house that opens up to the bookmakers. If
No.
you haven't seen it, Peaky Blinders is a brilliant TV
Not
drama series
that organised.
in Birmingham.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying your father was a gangster. I'm saying
He was an illegal bookie.
it was an illegal bookie, yes.
He made money from being an illegal bookie, as well as working.
Yes,
Because they wanted to get on in life.
yes.
So, because we're in these terrace houses. So then if the police were coming, I would have to run, tell my dad that the police were on the way. He would pick everything up out of the yard and go to another yard, because with terrace houses, you go through the whole of the terraces,
Yes.
house to house. He'd set up in another place, and my friends and I would be playing in the yard when the police got there, as if nothing had happened.
Wow.
So that was at 8.
It sounds fairly organised to me.
It was very organised, but he worked with the Italians.
This is Peaky Blinders then.
Yeah, so he did work, yeah. And when I watch it, it does remind me. But he did work with the Italians, because
Yes.
of course the Italians were all then in Bradford, Manchester.
Yes.
So that was the ice cream people as well.
Wow.
So my education was very, very varied, as I'm saying,
So you had an education in school
and out of
and
school.
a very colourful
Yes,
real life education outside of
Yes.
school as well.
absolutely.
And I imagine that taught you a lot.
It did teach me a lot, yeah. And I still remember a lot of the lessons. So once they started to make a little bit of money, they moved on then. They got enough money to buy a house, put a deposit on a house.
Yes.
Not to buy it, sorry, to rent a house, a decent house.
This
So
is
we
your
did-
mother and
this is
father?
my mother and father. So we moved to an area that was a little bit better.
Okay.
But they were still doing the bookies.
Yes.
But my mother by that time had applied for a licence to run a pub. So she
Wow.
was the first woman in the country to get a licence.
Wow.
So
Congratulations.
We then moved to a pub in Ardwick, which was the Bull's Head in Ardwick,
Yes.
which she took over. My dad was still working then. So she took over this pub, by which time I'd passed my 11 plus.
Wow. So all of that bookies runnering
Yes,
and feigning play for the police
yes.
had served you well,
That served me well.
and your colourful education, your
Yes.
life education, had meant that you could then pass your 11 plus.
Yes.
So you're obviously bright.
A little.
A little.
So I passed my 11 plus and then had to decide which school I was going to. Now,
Okay.
this is the difference in education, is because I chose to go to a technical high school rather than the grammar school,
Okay.
because I knew at that age that I wanted to be a nurse.
Yes, and you did speak about that in a previous
did,
podcast
yes.
episode. And if you haven't listened, The Life of Cadet Nurse Anne, it's a few episodes ago, and it really is worth a listen. And Anne talks about how you approached the door at Altrincham Hospital and you were
Correct.
affronted or were greeted, shall I say, by Miss Trunchbull, the nurse, the matron. She wasn't called Miss Trunchbull, but if you listen to the episode, you'll understand why I'm saying that.
You will, yeah.
So that gives a little bit more colour and life to that story.
That's right.
Okay, over to you then.
So I decided that I would go to this technical high school because, obviously, I would be guided along the lines of going into nursing.
So something a little bit more practical.
Practical, yes.
Yes.
So that involved a house in the school. This is the difference between today.
Okay.
We actually had a house in the school grounds where we were in this house, we were taught housekeeping, how to finances, stock taking in your own home, how to iron.
So real life skills.
Not
theoretical life skills, real life skills.
Yeah. Even taking stock in the kitchen of what we had in the kitchen cupboard for an ordinary family. And they used to have jelly cubes. You know, the jelly cubes.
I used to eat them as a child. Yeah. They're very tasty.
Yes. And Barbara, my friend, Barbara and I, when we were doing the stock taking, used to break the jelly cubes off and eat them.
Oh, you too? Yes. They're like sweets, aren't they? They are, they? Gelatine. Yeah, flavoured gelatine. They're delicious.
See, as girls, they're very good for your nails.
Are they?
Oh, yes, they're very good for nails and hair. So obviously that was our excuse for eating them.
Okay.
So I was going to be leaving school as soon as I was 15.
Yes.
So the skills that I was learning, my brother, who was very, very bright, he was brighter than me, he was very bright.
Yes.
Also decided when he passed his 11 plus and he passed from one of the major high schools, said he didn't want to go, he wanted to go to the same school as I went to. And my mother said to him, well, why do you want to go there when you've got the ability to go to this school?
Yes.
And he said, because I'm going to be a reporter. I want to be a reporter on the newspapers.
So you both knew what you wanted to do?
He knew as well, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So he came to this school and then he was and it's a one direction then, you see. You're directed into the area you want to be in. And that's what he did. And he did leave there and go on a local newspaper.
Wow.
So I look at education today and I think they're far too old. Why aren't children not directed at that very young age of 11 when you do know, you have an idea? Don't mean say you have to follow it, but direct children in the way they want to go, even if they want to be a coal miner. As long as you're giving them the education, children are all, now for me, the way I see it today, children are told that they have to have GCSEs, they have to have A-levels, they have to go on to university. They're missing out on large chunks of life. You could go to university. Wouldn't it be wonderful? For me, it would be wonderful if you went to school, left as I did.
Yes.
My education has been after I left school. I still became a nurse. I still did orthodontics. I still took up teaching.
Yes.
And yet left school at just 15.
You're right. And there are a number of people who do pick up their studies as adults and pick up further education and different career paths later in life or older in life. It doesn't have to be fixed that in your late teens you go to university and that's your path set.
But I think they think it is fixed now. That's the problem. You look at the Alan Sugars, he didn't.
There are a lot of people that are very successful that left school very early.
Yes.
And maybe that instilled a work ethic, and maybe one of the distinguishing factors, maybe, is a very strong work ethic and a desire to achieve and to be able to think outside of the box.
Yeah, I should imagine it is.
I'm speculating.
But would you, I don't know, do we get more confidence by being let free at that young age? Do we build more confidence within ourselves, I wonder? I'm not sure, and I don't know, this is only hypothetical, is because children are at school for so long and they're called children,
Yes.
Does that mean they don't have desire because that's all they're doing is exam, 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 and everything is set for every child the same? I don't know because I'm not taught at that age group, but it seems to me every school has to have the same achievements. I might be wrong in that. Every school aims for the same GCSEs.
Broadly speaking, yes.
Is there no difference in a curriculum?
No. In the United Kingdom, well, in England, Scotland has their own. It's because of devolution, but in England and Wales, there is a specific prescribed national curriculum. There are independent schools and faith-based schools and homeschooling of where it is different in different ways. But generally speaking, in the mainstream, the vast majority, and it is the vast majority of children at school are following the national curriculum, and they are, broadly speaking, receiving the same lessons.
So in a way, is that brainwashing the same? Is that still brainwashing if everybody is doing exactly the same, learning in the same way?
I think you could take it as that, and I think there is a case for that to be put forward. That could be taken positively or negatively, depending upon the information going in and the quality of the teaching and what is being taught in terms of the quality of the actual content, what's learned and why it's learned. It seems to me that the vast majority of young people now, the vast majority of people now, and maybe the people listening, maybe you listening, I don't know, to be honest with you, focusing on the financial aspect in terms of a career, a path, a job, how rich will people be? And there is a specific focus on that, even from a very young age, rather than passion for the actual vocation or career or job, however you want to frame it. It's about what's going to earn money and what's going to provide a good life. So that has a place, and I'm not belittling that or even saying that's wrong. I'm recognising that is very much at the forefront of young people's minds, and it's very much as to what they get told. Why am I doing this exam? Why am I doing this lesson? Why am I doing this piece of homework? And it's often repeated back by teachers. You're doing this to demonstrate that you are competent so that you can achieve and you can get qualifications that are enabling you to be able to get a good job and you'll be able to have a good life. That's it, or versions of that. That's often parroted back to students from the perspective of teachers and from the education system, that it's not specifically about the knowledge per se. It's about showing a level of competence and a level of ability that you are willing and able to learn, that is enabling you to move to the next phase, that is then going to enable you to receive a certain level of qualification that demonstrates your dexterity in a specific skill, but also your character is reliable and you're able to learn. And then when you enter the workplace, you're going to be able to achieve and you will earn good money and therefore you will have a good life. That's why you do this piece of homework. That's why you are sitting this exam. That's the path that everybody's following. I'm not saying that's right and I'm not saying that's wrong. And it certainly isn't what every student thinks. And it certainly isn't what every teacher says. But there is a general feeling and a general messaging that's sent out from the education system to children and families that follows loosely that messaging, and that comes from families as well, not necessarily you listening this morning, although it may come down to you listening this morning, and I repeat, I'm not saying that that is wrong. It certainly is a factor, and it's an important factor in a world where people work, people get paid, and that does have an impact on your opportunity to experience different aspects of life, and that's important.
Where does personality come into this, I wonder? The way I see it is personality doesn't seem to count. Listening to what you're saying.
I'm not saying that is right.
No, I'm not
nor
saying
that I think that.
No,
nor that everybody listening thinks that. But
No,
there
I
is
asked the question.
Yeah, okay.
It's me that asked the
it's
question.
generally put forward like that
Yes.
in a lot of cases.
Yeah. So for me, personality doesn't seem to matter anymore, because they apply for a job. Most people I speak to nowadays have to apply for a job online.
Yes.
So it's all done online. If
The
they
initial
have-
application, yes.
In lots of cases now, if they have an interview, they have it on screen. Or I don't know what you call it.
I don't know what the percentage is, but
Yeah.
yes, there is an element of online applications and online
Yes.
Zoom calls or calls that are like that
Yeah.
in terms of an interface of a screen, yes.
So for me,
For some interviews, I don't know the numbers, but for some, yes.
so I've done in my careers, I have done lots of interviews with young people or older people, but always have been face to face. Like
Yes.
my interviews were when I was
Yes.
growing up. Mine, as I've said in past podcasts, it was an interview with your mother and father there as well.
Yes.
When we had to do it. But when I've personally have done interviews, if I've seen somebody coming in, I've watched them walk in.
Yes.
I've watched how they react to people as they pass them.
Yes.
So I've more or less made my mind up before they get into the room and sit down.
Right, okay.
And that's being honest.
You've judged a book by its cover.
I've judged a book by the way they've interacted
Yeah, I know,
with other people.
I'm
And
jesting.
it is by its cover, yeah.
I'm jesting.
Definitely
Well, half
by-
jesting.
No.
Yes.
No, it is by its cover.
The soft skills. So we have our academic skills that are
Yeah.
written down and our life experience that's written down in our CV.
Yes.
But there are also the soft skills, which are the interpersonal skills, how you treat people, how you can speak, how you carry yourself,
Yes.
your manners, the general demeanour that you
And that's
ca-
more
that you carry.
important.
Yes.
Are they going to fit into the team of people that
Yes,
I'm working
yes,
with?
yes.
To me,
People skills.
is more important
Yes.
than what they have academically.
Yes,
Because
and
they can learn.
absolutely, and soft skills, social skills, people skills are
Yes.
fundamentally important to so many industries, so many workplaces, so many. They are also what a lot of people struggle with, even if they are supremely very intelligent
Yes.
and very intellectual, and they are high achieving individuals. However, they may not be great communicators, or they may not be brilliant working with other people or working as part of a team. And the job may involve working under somebody or with somebody, public speaking, working with a team, elements of a social network in some way, shape, form or another. So you're right. Specific qualifications alone provide some information. Previous employment provides some information, valuable information,
Yes.
necessary information, but not the whole picture.
No.
So you are right. As far as I am aware, a number, and I would imagine still a fair number of interviews are still taking place face to face.
I hope so.
I don't know any statistics, so I'm guessing.
Yes.
But my feeling is, and what I've seen and been a part of myself, I still feel the majority of interviews are still face-to-face, and employers prefer that for the reasons that you've talked about and other reasons, but you do get a better sense of somebody in the flesh.
Yes.
And there is definitely a greater depth and richness of experience in speaking with somebody in their presence
Yes.
than rather than through the medium of a screen, technology, some interface that's
And my
distorting.
Well, my dad used to always say, because he would know, he used to talk to my dad a lot.
Yes.
And if I was doing any interviews, I would talk to him about them. And he always said to me, Anne, the first thing you should look at is somebody's shoes. If they can't clean the shoes, don't employ them.
That's interesting.
Always. His shoes were always immaculate. And every night when I was growing up, every single night, he would put the shoes on the piece of paper on the table, newspaper on the table. All our shoes went onto that newspaper, and he polished them all every single night before we went out.
Wow. So you really did have pristine shoes in the morning.
Always, yeah. But he used to have to repair them himself because he couldn't afford to take them to be repaired. So
which is a life skill in and of itself, isn't
so
it?
we had to do, I had to do as well, make sure that, because when it was the Depression, my uncle walked to London, and when he came back, he had no soles on his shoes. He had newspaper inside his shoes, and he had string round them from the bottom to hold the soles on, because he'd worn them out walking to London and back for a job. And he didn't get a job, but he'd walk to London and back.
Wow.
So shoes were very, very important.
They are very important. They are.
So we have lost, haven't we? We've lost.
I remember.
Is it pride?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I remember that every Sunday evening I had to clean and polish my school shoes. And I had the...
Is that your dad or your granddad?
Both.
Both.
So I think it will have come from my grandfather to my father to myself. And they were leather shoes, so we had to get the shoe polish and work it in with the cloth, and then with the brush.
Yeah.
Until it was shiny, until you could see a reflection in it.
He didn't tell you how to have a bit of spit.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes. And also, I played a lot of football when I was younger. I absolutely loved it and played it many times a week. And I had to clean my football boots after every football match. So I had to, with a bucket of water and a brush, have to clean my football boots and then dub in my football boots. So I do remember my grandfather teaching me very clearly, look after your equipment, and your equipment will look after you. That was one of his many, many life mantras and pearls of wisdom. But I remember it, and I do feel that generally people don't live like that anymore. They live in a society that is disposable. Yeah. And I feel that I'm even a part of that as well, because I don't take care to the same extent of my equipment.
You still do your shoes?
It's still ingrained in me that I clean my shoes. I would not go out with dirty shoes. Yeah. I wouldn't. It's ingrained in me.
You're the only one who uses wipes every time you go out on trainers.
Well, with white trainers, they do scuff and get dirty very quickly, if they are white trainers. So yes, I have some wipes and clean them on before I go out. Not great in this weather. Yeah, it's true. It is true. I do feel we've barely scratched the surface, haven't we? And it's been fascinating. It's always fascinating to hear from you about your life in any context, to be honest with you. You've lived and continue to live such a rich and fascinating and worthwhile life with such wisdom and personality, to use what you spoke about before, that is maybe lacking now. Yeah. So if it's okay with you, maybe next week or in a week to come soon, we can revisit this, because education, your education, but also education in general, is so important. Yeah, I do feel there are issues and questions and concerns about today's education in terms of the safety of children, the safety of teachers, an increase in school incidents, stabbings in schools, children being murdered by other children, teachers being attacked. Never mind what's being taught, why it's being taught, who it's being taught to, and the system itself. Now, I know this is a subject that everybody will have an opinion on. Everybody will have their thoughts on. Everybody will have emotions that are stirred. Education, like health, is one of those unilateral, bipartisan, human, universal experiences that we all share. It's fundamentally important to our lives. So your wisdom is going to be vital for that. And interesting, so we can return to it, if that's okay with you, Anne.
It'd be great to return to it. And please, if you've got any questions about this, would you please send them to us, and we will discuss them.
Yes, absolutely.
Because these are important issues.
They are. And any other issues, topics, questions to do with any theme or subject that you would like us to discuss in the future, please get in touch with us and let us know what you are thinking. We would love to hear from you. Feedback is very much welcome, and thank you. I think we'll have to leave it there, Anne.
Okay.
That's gone very quickly. I know. And we say that all the time, don't we?
Yes, we do.
We always start and finish by saying it's gone quickly. Well, it does. It does. Thank you for tuning in this morning. Thank you for listening. Genuinely, we hope that you have enjoyed it. And we look forward to speaking with you again next week.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye.